Hello, welcome to the WP Crowd podcast series, Teaching WordPress. We're going to have a little bit of a three-part episode series exploring what we think about teaching WordPress, our experiences, passing on our tips and tricks. With that, let's go around and welcome everybody today on the podcast. Let's start with Michelle Butcher.
Hi everyone, Michelle Butcher-Jones. I'm from Southern Illinois. I head up the Southern Illinois WordPress meetup, and I'm also on the team for WP Kids Camp that is helping build all the standards for kids camps throughout the globe.
Awesome. I heard you had a really awesome kids camp at Miami recently too.
Yes, it was great. That is actually one of my favorite kids camps to go and help out with.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's say hello to Mr. Carl Alexander. How are you, Carl?
Hi, I'm good. I'm Carl Alexander. I speak at WordCamps. I organize WordCamp Montreal. I also write a lot on carlalexander.ca on advanced programming topics centered around WordPress, as well as a bit of server configuration and things like that. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Say hello to Roy. Roy, are you going to chime in during this episode, or are you just here as a ghost?
I can chime in. I've taught people things about WordPress.
You're wearing the brand appropriate shirt too, which out of all four of us, I think you're the only winner.
Yeah, again, not my first rodeo. And just to be on this side of it, my name is Roy Sivan. I am a front-end developer and WordPress developer, and I teach on lynda.com. You know, you might have heard of that website, as well as on calderalearn.com.
Wonderful. You guys, most people know about me, but I'll give a little intro. My name is Megan Haynes. I love code. I love teaching people how to code. And we are here today to talk about our experience in that. Also, WordCamp Ottawa 2017 is happening soon. Announcement happening soon, so pay attention for that. So, teaching WordPress is kind of different from teaching, general things in general. Like in a class, teaching WordPress is a little bit difficult. So I want to start with Michelle. You've had a lot of experience teaching WordPress with children, and that gives you a good perspective. So what do you think about teaching WordPress in general?
It's definitely a hands-on experience. Just handing a book and saying, here, go learn WordPress is not the way to do it. I've done both, working with children, teaching, and beginners of WordPress, I want a website, what is WordPress, starting out. It's definitely, you have to go step by step and show the process instead of lecture or teach the process.
I think that's a good note. People who try to do a book learning of WordPress or just reading things, I find won't get the full experience than if they just kind of jump in and get deep with it and start playing around with it. You learn a lot that way.
Yes. And it's once you get into a system of it, like for most WordCamps, we've always taught WordPress.com instead of self-hosted until this year. Now we're starting to do both. And the kids really get into it, and the brainstorming of what they want their site to be is actually the most fun of it.
It's fun that you bring up the brainstorming for children. I actually got into code when I was young as well. It was a fan site on GeoCities. So I always never forget that passion of what your hobby does. And I saw that with teaching kids CSS as well at Ladies Learning Code. When people do things out of love of a passion or something, they can blast through a lot of difficult, barriers and such.
That's true for developers in general, right? When you're teaching someone who has an actual passion for learning that particular thing, you're giving them the building blocks to learn, but then they're never going to stop learning from there. I learned the basics of HTML from a book, but I learned WordPress, PHP, JavaScript from my own self-taught stuff, it's why I like teaching, so much, is because you're kind of giving someone the foundation. But if they really, really want to be a developer and they really want to learn what it is they're doing, they're going to take it on themselves and kind of go from there. And then you know, sometimes they'll come back to you and be like, hey, you taught me this, and now I'm learning this, and I have a question. It's really cool to see some of that kind of stuff too.
That's just like in my first getting into computers. Of course, I went to normal college and was looking at books studying for code and totally couldn't wrap my mind around it at first. But then get into things like Linda and Code Academy, where you're actually learning by doing. You catch on a lot quicker as well.
I think the more often you can make learning into a fun experience in general, whether it's for children or for adults, whether it's for new people or old people to be experienced or not, the more you can make it a fun and casual thing, the more people will enjoy learning it.
I think there's a barrier there though. Like, you can make it a fun experience for like just getting started with something, but like I learn a lot from Carl's blog, for example. It's not very fun and exciting. It's very like, the only reason I have
saying anything.
the only reason I find Carl's blog really like fun to, you know, read and learn from is because he's writing really interesting things, but they're really, really high level. Like, they're way higher than, you know, intro to CSS. They're not like, hey, let's turn this thing red. It's like, hey,
but Roy,
here's some like object oriented stuff.
Do you really need another intro to CSS at a basic level? Carl Alexander does what Carl Alexander does great, man.
Well, I'm just saying, like, fun and easy, I think, goes only to a certain level. And then after that, it's really like passion-based fun, I guess.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I chime in. I mean, I think there's a fun aspect to increasing your skill at some point, like taking on something challenging and overcoming it or like figuring it out. But that's usually not with beginners as much. Like, beginners, they're just kind of, you're going to be, you want fun as in like, oh, I got something on the screen. Like I'm achieving something that I can see, as opposed to achieving something that I've learned, which comes a bit later when you're trying to just improve yourself, improve your mastery over WordPress or whatever technology you're using. I think the dynamic changes as you get. So that's kind of why.
Oh yeah, there's not going to be a Bill Nye level for every level that you go up on the chain. Eventually stuff gets dry and a bit technical, but I don't know, having buddies to help explain it in my mind, in my experience, that's been the success for me in acquiring the lingo that I don't have, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, again, it really depends on your passion. Like, you could either, you get to a point where, trust me, there's moments where I want to crawl into a cave as someone who's learning. Hell, the first time I met Carl, he was like, he didn't tell me my code was garbage, but he basically told me my code was garbage and was like, here's how you should program this PHP. And I'm like, oh, that's fascinating. Let me go shoot myself in the face. But Carl was like, here, let me explain to you why you should do it that way. And like, after a weekend in Toronto sitting, making Diet Pepsi forts, I learned a lot more about PHP that way. But it wasn't like, again, the fun and excitement comes from the passion, not from like making it a fun and exciting thing. Like, he definitely didn't make it a fun and exciting. He wasn't like, look at the unicorn, we're gonna make this a PHP class.
And that's why we have Carl board now.
Yes, exactly.
Carl board brings the fun. Regular Carl just brings in the pain. So.
I'm a bit camera shy right now, but I got paper Carl board, so.
Nice.
This is my 3D printed copy of Carl board. Because I still don't get a sticker because I'll never get
Cardboard mini.
We have stickers laying around somewhere. Anyway, back to teaching. Megan.
What? All right, next question. What do you find to be the most rewarding part about teaching WordPress? Like, and we're going to talk, you can pick any skill level. You want to pick beginners, you want to pick intermediates or advanced, anyway. What's the most rewarding to you personally? Michelle, off the top of my head.
For the kids, the most rewarding is when they get their site set up and when they they type in what they want. We don't have them to look at their actual site until they're done adding some things like a homepage and stuff like that. And then when they first look at their site and their eyes get just huge and they're like, this is mine. I have a website. This is so cool. It is so much fun watching just the animation and the liveliness on these. Typically they're 6 to 12-year-olds.
Nice. That's a pretty valuable thing for me personally. Like my artistry side of it, always loved the creative aspect of making websites, and the technical part is fun as well, the logic part, but the execution and the fact that you make this cool, essentially a zine, right, a poster, just a digital one, was always really fascinating and cool. Carl, you come in from a more technical point of view. What do you like? What's awesome for you when you impart a lesson on somebody? What's cool?
I mean, I'm like a niche within a niche within a niche. So when somebody is like, you teach this so well, like that's awesome. Or you made this like really complicated thing so much more approachable than most people do. I'm always very humbled about that, even though like most of the time people are like, you lost me at hi, I'm Carl. But but when one person comes up, I mean, I don't have very high expectations. If I get one person come up to me and say that, I'm already like beyond ecstatic. But I think for me, like I get value into imparting, I think, problem solving. You talked a lot about creativity. I talk a lot about creativity too. I think there's a creative aspect to design in software that's not talked a lot as much because it's so much easier to just go copy paste a solution from Stack Overflow. But from the context of what I'm teaching, design and creativity is super important because there's no clear-cut answers. It's a free-for-all. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody can do whatever they want. So it's really the creative aspect of how you approach the problem is really important to me to teach. And I go out of my way always to explain what I'm thinking, like why I approached it this specific way, because that's really what I want to impart on the student is this creative aspect of problem solving.
I think one of the themes I'm hearing, and we heard it in kind of different ways throughout everyone, but Roy said it, you just kind of said it, is the best part of teaching is not the giving them the solution, but the enlightening into the way to find the answer. It's the teach a man to fish, give a man to fish philosophy, right? It's pretty rewarding to help somebody inspire themselves to actually find solutions and learn stuff, because that's how we learned it, right? Like we hacked shit together back in the days. Back in the 90s in GeoCities, we copied and pasted each other's code and learned by ripping it apart. And that's still true nowadays, especially with GPL principles. If you want to know how Jetpack works, rip it apart. Why not? Make a copy and rip it apart. That's the way we learned, and it's the way we learned in a long time.
Well, we've talked a lot about this for like leveling up as a developer, but reading the code is always a great way to not just level up as a developer, but learn and teach. Like, I think from a teaching point of view, showing people code is kind of monotonous and boring. Like, I was joking around with people at NGConf who were asking me about my talk, and the thing about being a developer who giving talks that are technical, the face people make in the audience when you're giving a talk that they're actually intrigued with what you're coding is the same exact face they give when they're also bored out of their mind. Like, it's the same face. Like, whether they're intrigued at what code is on you're showing or they're bored, they make the same blank face. So, which is why I incorporate, like, let's say a lot of humor in my talk, because I need the interaction. But it's the same thing. You never know if they're bored or you're over their head, or they're totally with you and they're like, "Ooh, this is really interesting."
Squint head tilt.
Yeah. So it's really hard to. It's an interesting area, like, because you want to enlighten people, but you're not sure if you're over their heads. And I would say the other difficult thing, like, I get a lot back from people who ask me questions, or when I do like my Linux.com thing, or even just a talk, and then I get a Twitter question later on. I'm not sure how Carl does it, but for me, I'm like teaching as I learn. So like I have like imposter syndrome like 99% of the time because like as I'm learning something, I'm like, let me teach you about it. Even though like it's not like
I
I've
do
been
that a lot too.
yeah,
I
and
talked
then
about it in Atlanta.
but then you get a question about like how to do something, and you're like, why are you asking me? I don't know. But you're the one that talked about it, so you have to go do the research.
I actually just talked about that. Like my entire Atlanta talk was about that. It was like
Nice.
learning by teaching. I called it.
Is Atlanta's videos up?
I think it might.
Some
be.
are. I don't know if yours is, but some are.
Let's put that in the show notes then. Make sure we have a link for that in the show notes for later.
But I think it really depends how much. See, my counter argument is usually if you're going to teach something, you're probably going to go out of your way more to learn more about it than if you just do it. And you'll probably be more ready for questions than if you had just done it, like wrote a small post that just said, I did this, no explanation. Unless that's what you're talking about, Roy. But
No.
I
get it. You go out of your way to do something really specific, and you teach that very specific thing. But then, as much as I love getting questions about it, but I'll get random off tangential kind of questions that are like, hey, I see that you did, you're talking about WordPress and Angular. I'm building this Angular application that does X, Y, Z. How do you do this? And I'm like, okay, hold on. Let me do my own research and Google that for you, essentially, while I go figure it out myself.
I don't know if you need to be going to that level. I mean, that's kind of, I would probably, if I were in that case, and I always make the option in my talks for everyone to reach out. I think I've had maybe 5 or 10 people over the years actually reach out with questions. So do that, man. But when people ask me questions, instead of actually going for a full answer, sometimes I'll just be like, hey, so just a high level kind of thing. I would look here, here, and here. And if it doesn't take me more than like a minute to tweet it back, then the answer is going to be, well, here's my site. Like, let's talk. Because I don't know, if I'm imparting I love teaching, but at the same time, I have a finite amount of time in my life and I have to pay bills. So there's always
there's definitely a line there. Like the whole not doing free work thing. Going back to your original question, or your last question, which is, what do you get out of teaching more than anything? I love teaching to people who want to learn. Like, that's it. Like that, what we just talked about, the whole, people asking you questions. I get questions a lot where it's basically not really the direct question, but the offhanded question is, hey, can you code this for me? Right? Because you teach this, you should know how to do this.
And that's it. There's a presumption that because I offer to share my time and teach, that you can ask me. And there's a time and a place for everything. And that place is usually at the end of the talk for a minute or two. And other than that, we've got finite resources and we have to share. But generally speaking, that's we're talking about meta education at this point, where we talk and present things and, people are still learning how to ask the right questions and do that. For me, that's my favorite part of teaching WordPress, is taking somebody down the pipeline of WordPress from, I don't know WordPress, to, oh, I know that sticker, I've seen that sticker before, to, oh, I use that for my business or for my other company, to, actually, I was thinking about starting my own thing, to, well, I customized a theme, to, oh my God, I buy my own plugin. Watching them go and make that journey, for me, is just fantastic. It gives me a smile on my face every single time I see someone do it. So we have a lot of experience with teaching a variety of number of groups, age groups, education groups, and the like. Let's kind of have a little chat about a little round robin of your favorite teaching tips and tricks. One of the things we talked about earlier was gauging your audience. And that's so important. When you're teaching somebody, you can ask preliminary questions to see how many people have heard of plugins before, how many people have heard of whatever at the beginning of your talk or presentation. If you don't have that information, throughout registration or stuff, the day of, a hands up poll will help you gauge your audience, and then that lets you kind of communicate the best knowledge at the best level for the audience. Let's go around. Somebody chime in.
One of the biggest things too also to have is patience. because some people might not catch on as quick as others. And you
Absolutely.
have to take the lowest and the highest denominator and go kind of in the middle for teaching.
I've done a lot of teaching that have mentors around. Having somebody, at least one other person, if you're teaching more than 5 people even, to be there to answer questions for the ones who have tangents and the ones who, so you're almost like swimming like fish, right? If you're teaching a group, you kind of keeping all the fish together, and there's always a few that kind of swim off because they have questions and different, Wi-Fi craps out and other things have problems and such, and patience is needed. So having an extra hand, in my opinion, helps really greatly. Carl, what are some of your tips for teaching?
Don't take shortcuts. I say that quote all the time. Every time, at least for coding, explain everything. Don't make the assumption that they'll know. Like if you're going from A to C, don't make the assumption that people will know that there's B in between. Say what B is, because every time that I've taken a shortcut, I don't anymore, but every time I took a shortcut, I'm like, no, they'll know what I'm talking about. They won't ask the question. Every single time, question in the comments about that specific skip. So make sure you don't skip anything if you're explaining a talk process. That applies as well to talk processes. Like just explain everything that you're thinking so that they can really do the A to B to C by themselves, just by reading.
All right, Roy, you get the last word on this podcast as producer. Everyone must know this.
I'm going to go with a do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Prepare your slides if you're doing a slide presentation while teaching. I tend to do mine, like minutes before a talk. And I don't really mind because most of my talks are something I already know enough about where it actually is beneficial to me because I'll know exactly what my slides are right before because I'm just working on them. But if you're teaching something large scale, get your slides down and try to avoid live coding as much as possible. Sometimes it's inevitable, but I find that if you just put really clear code on the slide, it is way more effective than live coding something.
Do not live code. I'm going to interrupt you. As an organizer, I've been an organizer for WordCamp Montreal for over 5 years. I've dealt with speakers. You do not live code. Some people can pull it off, but you will not. Most of the time, you will not. And it destroys the flow of your talk, and then people just clock out.
To add on to that, there's no need to live code. You can, like you said, have a slide that clarifies it and a chunk of code there in GitHub for people to live do on their thing or whatever. There's no case that I have personally seen where live coding is necessary in a WordCamp presentation.
Yeah.
Screenshots. Every step.
I did a workshop for WP Campus last year. It was a 2-hour workshop where I was actually anticipating live coding, and I set up my code to step-by-step live code to get from one Git branch to the next Git branch. I ended up just essentially just bringing in the next Git branch and then stepping through my code, which I might as well just have them on the slides at that point. And that was way more beneficial to people. Like having my code up there zoomed in, walking through it almost line by line or function by function or method by method, whatever, rather than sitting there typing every single line or every single character. Don't do it. I know you think you're a cowboy or whatever because you're going to do it and you think you're going to be really cool with it. Don't. It's just not worth it. Also, if you are going to be doing coding on any level, if you don't want to put it into your slides and you just want to have it shown, or maybe just for your own prep, create a repo in GitHub or whatever, and then branch it properly. Like I had to do this for lynda.com, because every step you have to have a zip file. So I basically did it from that. But yeah, every time I code anything, it's just like, all right, step 1, here's a branch. Step 2, here's a branch. Step 3, here's a branch. It's just easier to go step by step that way.
Yeah, same with live demos. Don't do live demos.
No.
No live coding, no live demos.
Find a plugin that can record your screen as like a GIF. and just show that instead on a slide, because that's going to be way better.
That's slick.
Yeah, and it looks and it's way better. And you're not making a movie out of it. You're making just a GIF, so it's fine.
Yeah, anytime you do that, the internet's going to go down or something's going to happen.
It's a Murphy's Law. Like, anytime you have to do anything, something's going to mess up and not going to allow you to do it. Whether it's a live demo or live coding, like, something's going to mess up. So preferably put everything into your slides as much as you can.
Awesome. With that, let us end the first edition of this new series, this small micro series. I don't know what the name is, but we'll deal with branding later. Thank you for joining us today. As always, we invite you to join us and subscribe to us if you are not. If you have gotten this via, social friend and all that, that's great. Welcome. It was great to have you. But we really want you to be a part of our little WP family, our WP Life family. Wait, that's a new shirt, Roy. I thought it was the WP Crowd shirt, but it's actually the WP Life shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you missed that up this morning about the shirt.
I totally missed that.
The WP Life shirts, along with WP Crowd shirts, along with Carl Board shirts, are all available in the WP Crowd store.
There's Carl Board t-shirts.
Yeah.
We need High Roy t-shirts.
And sweatshirts.
There
and
are
everything.
High Roy t-shirts. Did you not see James wear one?
Yeah. High Roy shirts are not available in the WP Crowd store, just Carl Board and WP Crowd and WP Life shirts.
We need to make that happen.
Maybe someone will. Maybe someone will in our wishes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Subscribe to us and come on. We want to hear your comments. Reply down below. We'll see you guys next time.